1860, the year of the Civil War, in which, by the way, there were, I don't say this in the movie, but there were 4 million slaves in America in 1860. I say no Republican owned a slave. All those slaves, every one of them, was owned by a Democrat. Now, this is like fighting words, right? Number one, I've never heard anyone say that in my life. Number two, it's a factual claim. It's very easily refutable in a scientific sense. All you have to do is give me a list of 5 Republicans who own slaves and I'd have to take it back. No Democrat, no liberal, no progressive has been able to give a single example. The only example in the entire debate following my movie is somebody said that Ulysses H. Grant inherited on his wife's side a slave. And I pointed out that that was true, but that occurred at the time when Ulysses H. Grant was a Democrat. So the single effort on the basis of one guy to refute my argument falls. So this is what I mean. Facts are very incendiary because everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And so I try in my movies to make them emotionally powerful, but to have a certain density of facts like this that are out there, irrefutable, and the left can shout and scream, but there it is. There it is.
I know something I won't tell. I won't tell. I won't tell. I know something I won't tell.
What you know, huh?
Well, it's just that Injun Joe is ticklish.
America became the great nation she is today, thanks to brave men like these.
Shucks, it's quite nothing.
Fourth of July, and I'm finished. Just take me a minute on this one. I don't want to take advantage because I know you got other things to do, but 4th of July. Why do I refer to it as the 4th of July? White folks came to me and said, black man, if you help me win my freedom from the tyranny of King George, I will give you your freedom. Because every one of those dogs that wrote, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, were either slave holders or had made their fortune off of the slave trade in some way, form, or fashion. All 54 of those dirt farmers that met at the First and Second Continental Congress, and Jews among them, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. I don't know where the city of Washington is. I know where Banneker City is. I live near Banneker City. I don't know where no damn Washington is. I wouldn't name anything after him. I don't even like mentioning his name. He died as a result of catching pneumonia in the slave quarters after raping a black woman. And that's recorded by white historian Arnold Toynbee. He had over 350-some slaves. Sold one slave, traded him for a hog's head of rum. Father of whose country? Certainly not mine. And to make my children look up to this dog is mental genocide. Thomas Jefferson, the great architect of freedom, who wasn't misguided entertainer, saying, you know, one who wrote the document and signed the document that freed all men. It did not free all men. It only freed the rich landed gentry in the 13 colonies. It didn't even free the common man in the 13 colonies. And it damn sure didn't free us. He had slaves, and he had this penchant for messing with adolescent girls, impregnating them, and when he had the black babies from those girls, from those slave girls, he would take them at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old and work them in his nail factory. I'm supposed to honor that? The shot that was heard around the world, I'll be finished in a minute. The shot that was heard around the world was not fired at Lexington, and it wasn't even heard around the world. The rest of the world didn't give a damn about it. Excuse me for cussing so much. That bullet landed in the chest of Crispus Attucks, which I am not proud of, because he was a chump, a misguided chump. Why you say that, Brother Shaka? Why you be so cold? He just come off the plantation himself. And now he gonna stand there and fight for the slave owner. If you got to catch a bullet for something, catch it for them brothers and sisters back there wanting their freedom. And they repaid him by celebrating his birthday until they came up with the July 4th thing. On March the 5th, they call it Crispus Attucks Day, and they made a statue to him with a white woman standing over top of an eagle, spreading wings, just had his name. He put his picture on it. That's how much they thought about him. But one of the British generals came here because, see, what had happened is the British started recruiting the black slaves. Said, we're going to put a gun in your hand. Okay. We're going to put a gun in your hand. And we're going to let you shoot at white folks. Blood started joining the British Army by the hundreds and thousands. And so George Washington, who didn't want black folks in the army in the first place, said, we don't arm the blacks, we're not going to win this war. And one of the generals that came over here said, we're not at war with the 13 colonies, we're at war with Ethiopia. There were so many black folks there in that war. Now, after we won the war for them, they plunged us deeper in slavery than ever we had been. I'm going to read this closing statement. I'm really finished now. On the 4th of July. I'm going to call on Brother Frederick Douglass now, who said it so well. And the white folks can really be arrogant. They call this man an ex-slave, fighting for the abolition of other slaves, to come in the year 1852 and give a speech on his love for America on their 76th anniversary of America's independence. And old Fred came. Yes, he did. And this is what Fred said. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? Our answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days of the year the gross injustice and cruelties to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity, Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgiving, with all your religious parades and solemnity, are to him mere bombast, deceptions, and pious hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on the earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of the United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through all the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, travel through South America, search out every abuse, and when you have found the last, lay your facts side by side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without a rival. Brothers and sisters, that is what the 4th of July and any other European holiday means to me. So when you are celebrating, make sure you are celebrating that which has brought life to you, which has enhanced your life, which has advanced your life, which is a part of your great and glorious history. For if you celebrate the defeat of your enemy over you, you will be a fool. And we are being called back to be the wise kings and queens of the earth once again. Don't blow this opportunity. Peace be with you.
Was the American Civil War fought because of slavery? More than 150 years later, this remains a controversial question. Why? Because many people don't want to believe that the citizens of the southern states were willing to fight and die to preserve a morally repugnant institution. There has to be another reason, we are told. Well, there isn't. The evidence is clear and overwhelming. Slavery was, by a wide margin, the single most important cause of the Civil War, for both sides. Before the presidential election of 1860, a South Carolina newspaper warned that the issue before the country was the extinction of slavery, and called on all who were not prepared to surrender the institution to act. Shortly after Abraham Lincoln's victory, they did. The secession documents of every Southern state made clear, crystal clear, that they were leaving the Union in order to protect their peculiar institution of slavery. a phrase that at the time meant the thing special to them. The vote to secede was 169-0 in South Carolina, 166-7 in Texas, 84-15 in Mississippi. In no southern state was the vote close. Alexander Stephens of Georgia, the Confederacy's vice president, clearly articulated the views of the South in March 1861. Our new government, he said, was founded on slavery. Its foundations are laid. Its cornerstone rests upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, submission to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. Yet despite the evidence, many continue to argue that other factors superseded slavery as the cause of the Civil War. Some argue that the South only wanted to protect states' rights. But this raises an obvious question. The states' rights to what? Wasn't it to maintain and spread slavery? Moreover, states' rights was not an exclusive Southern issue. All the states, North and South, sought to protect their rights. Sometimes they petitioned the federal government. Sometimes they quarreled with each other. In fact, Mississippians complained that New York had too strong a concept of states' rights because it would not allow Delta planters to bring their slaves to Manhattan. The South was preoccupied with states' rights because it was preoccupied first and foremost with retaining slavery. Some argue that the cause of the war was economic. The North was industrial and the South agrarian. And so, the two lived in such economically different societies that they could no longer stay together. Not true. In the middle of the 19th century, both North and South were agrarian societies. In fact, the North produced far more food crops than did the South. But Northern farmers had to pay their farmhands, who were free to come and go as they pleased, while Southern plantation owners exploited slaves over whom they had total control. And it wasn't just plantation owners who supported slavery. The slave society was embraced by all classes in the South. The rich had multiple motivations for wanting to maintain slavery, but so did the poor, non-slaveholding whites. The peculiar institution ensured that they did not fall to the bottom rung of the social ladder. That's why another argument that the Civil War couldn't have been about slavery because so few people owned slaves has little merit. Finally, many have argued that President Abraham Lincoln fought the war to keep the Union together, not to end slavery. That was true at the outset of the war, but he did so with the clear knowledge that keeping the Union together meant either spreading slavery to all the states, an unacceptable solution, or vanquishing it altogether. In a famous campaign speech in 1858, Lincoln said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." What was it that divided the country? It was slavery and only slavery. He continued, "I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. It will become all one thing or all the other." Lincoln's view never changed, and as the war progressed, the moral component, ending slavery, became more and more fixed in his mind. His Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 turned that into law. Slavery is the great shame of America's history. No one denies that. But it's to America's everlasting credit that it fought the most devastating war in its history in order to abolish slavery. As a soldier, I am proud that the United States Army, my army, defeated the Confederates. In its finest hour, soldiers wearing this blue uniform, almost 200,000 of them former slaves themselves, destroyed chattel slavery, freed 4 million men, women, and children from human bondage, and saved the United States of America. I'm Colonel Ty Sigilly, Professor and Head, Department of History at the United States Military Academy, West Point, for Prager University.
but it makes me think about Indians. You know, they got names like Red Cloud, Crazy Horse, Running Bear, Black Elk.
That kind of shit.
Yeah, Indians, niggers, same thing. Indians, niggers, same thing. Indians, niggers, same thing.
I didn't even know you were black if you didn't tell me.
Does it matter about
doesn't
color?
matter. No, it doesn't
Attitude?
matter. But
See, this is what I love. I love when white people try to define African Americans. What is African American? What is an African American? I'm African American regardless of my skin color or my hair or my clothes or my attitude, and I think I'm the only one on the stage who's qualified to talk about the meaning of the word, how it hurts, how it doesn't hurt, where it's used, the history of it, because I live it every day.
It's in every song. It's in every song on the radio, okay? The nigga, 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 nigga is in every song, okay? People come up to me and go, Bill, you a nigga. But I can't say thank you, or I go, no, please don't use that word, or I can't use that word back. There's a rap group, Niggas with Attitude. My mother said to me, NWA. She said, what does that mean? So I have to say, Mom, it means something with attitude.
Indians, niggers, same thing.
My question to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, as an African American, as a black man, when can I protest? When can I speak out? When can I show frustration and anger? When I march, you condemn me. When I talk on the internet, you condemn me. When I say it on television, you condemn me. Anywhere in the public square where black people talk about this, it just basically say a simple affirmation that black lives matter, that our lives have value. We are constantly ridiculed and criticized. When is the appropriate time? I would think the fact that it was an African American named Crispus Attucks who was the first sacrifice in what was the start of the Revolutionary War, that in every single conflict this country has ever had, black people have fought in it and fought with honor and valor, only to come home to discrimination and subjugation and oppression. I would think if anyone had the right to speak out against the injustices of America, it is black folks, because they have shed blood, sweat, tears, and toil for it. I come from a people who have died for the simple right to vote. for the simple right to walk down the street, for the simple right to use the same bathroom as their white counterparts. I have seen young men such as Damon Grimes in my city who was killed for riding an ATV. This was a child with a 4.0 GPA. Everything he was, everything he was going to be, everyone he was going to touch, every life that he was going to have impact for was snuffed out. And for what? A civil infraction? Is that what little my life has to you as a black person? Don't I have value? Don't I have meaning? Don't you look at me and see a man that bleeds the same blood that you do? And you treat my children that way? You killed him. You murdered him. And there was no consequence. There was no trial. Nobody was brought to justice for that. I went to that funeral. I saw that mother crying. I held her in my arms. We are angry. We are incensed. These are our babies. These are our children. A job as a man, as a parent, is to make sure that your child makes it and becomes what he wants to be. That's why we're protesting. That's why we're fighting, because we believe in the American spirit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We're not protesting the flag. We thank God for the flag. Black folks have sacrificed for the flag. Hell, if it wasn't for black slavery, there wouldn't be a flag. You used us to build this country, and we didn't get any reparations for that. I'm still waiting for my 40 acres in the mule. And I know black folks who are upset about that, and they should be. We're not protesting the flag. We are using this opportunity because we know what the flag represents, which is freedom of speech. We know what the flag represents because we have sacrificed the most for America to be what it is, because it was built on our backs. So when we do this and when we're out here in these streets and we talk about Black Lives Matter, it's not to say that other lives don't. It's just so that you see us and you understand that we have value in all the things that we have accomplished as black people. The clock, the almanac, the baby buggy, the carbon filament in the light bulb, the telephone, the shoe lasting machine. All these things were built by black folks. The internet with Phil Wally. All the things that we've done, all the things that we contributed, all the things that we sacrificed for as patriots, as fellow Americans and brothers in arms. All we're saying is just look at us. Love us the same way that we love you and love this country. That's all we're saying. We just want value. We just want to be heard. We just want our children to be able to walk up and down the street and not have to worry about them being killed and them being shot and them being murdered. That's it. Just value our lives, because Black Lives Matter. Thank you, Madam President.
It comes as a great shock to discover that the country, which is your birthplace, and to which you owe your life and your identity, has not in its whole system of reality evolved any place for you. It comes as a great shock around the age of 5 or 6 or 7 to discover that the flag to which you have pledged allegiance, along with everybody else, has not pledged allegiance to you. It comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you. When I was growing up, I was taught in American history books that Africa had no history, and neither did I. That I was a savage, about whom the less said the better, who had been saved by Europe and brought to America. And of course, I believed it. I didn't have much choice. Those are the only books there were. I am stating very seriously, and this is not an overstatement, that I picked the cotton. And I carried it to market. And I built the railroad. Under someone else's whip. For nothing. For nothing. If one has got to prove one's title to the land, isn't 400 years enough? 400 years, at least 3 wars. The American soil is full of the corpses of my ancestors. Why is my freedom or my citizenship or my right to live there, how is it conceivably a question now? What we are not facing is the results of what we've done.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a off the field right now, out, he's fired. He's fired!
He is a white supremacist, and she is absolutely correct, and I support her, and there's no reason she should be fired, and how dare he talk about firing her after he has demeaned people, he's called people names. I mean, he is the worst kind. This is what their mission is, to keep America white. You know, when they talk about making America great again, and they talk about, you know, us being the premier nation, or however this, that's all about. You know, they don't like all of this so-called diversity and all of these ethnics who are growing in the United States and, you know, taking, you know, a role in business and government and all. That's what that's all about.
The president spent this week attacking hardworking men who were peacefully and legally standing up for what they believed in by calling them sons of bitches and trying to turn their fellow Americans against them by purposely changing the narrative, pitting patriots on the football field against patriots on the battlefield, all while shamelessly using the flag and race as cudgels. A stunning lack of leadership. Leadership, something that has been lacking from the top. Real leaders seek to bring people together. Real leaders don't drive divisions for their own self-aggrandizement. Real leaders seek to lower the temperature and elevate thinking and awareness. And I really hope the president is watching tonight, as well as his supporters. Because one leader, one real leader, is a superintendent of the U.S. Air Force Academy, Lieutenant General J.B. Silveria. Silveria gathered more than 5,000 students, staff, and Air Force officers of the 10th Air Base Wing in Colorado Springs after some cowards wrote racist slurs on a message board at the Academy's prep school. This is the kind of message that President Trump should be sending to America. Listen.
You may have heard that some people down in the prep school wrote some racial slurs on some message boards. If you haven't heard that, I wanted you to hear it from me. If you're outraged by those words, then you're in the right place. That kind of behavior has no place at the prep school, it has no place at USAFA, and it has no place in the United States Air Force. You should be outraged not only as an airman, but as a human being. And I'll tell you that the appropriate response for horrible language and horrible ideas, the appropriate response is a better idea. So that's why I'm here. Some of you may think that that happened down in the prep school and doesn't apply to us. I would be naive, and we would all be naive to think that everything is perfect here. We would be naive to think that we shouldn't discuss this topic. We would also be tone deaf not to think about the backdrop of what's going on in our country. Things like Charlottesville and Ferguson, the protests in the NFL. That's why we have a better idea. One of those ideas, the dean brought people together to discuss Charlottesville. Because what we should have is a civil discourse and talk about these issues. That's a better idea. We received outstanding feedback from that session at Charlottesville. But I also have a better idea, and it's about our diversity. And it's the power of the diversity, the power of the 4,000 of you and all of the people that are on the staff tower and lining the glass, the power of us as a diverse group. The power that we come from all walks of life, that we come from all parts of this country, that we come from all races, we come from all backgrounds, gender, all makeup, all upbringing. The power of that diversity comes together and makes us that much more powerful. That's a much better idea than small thinking and horrible ideas. We have an opportunity here, 5,500 people in this room, to think about what we are as an institution. This is our institution, and no one can take away our values. No one can write on a board and question our values. No one can take that away from us. So just in case you're unclear on where I stand on this topic, I'm going to leave you with my most important thought today. If you can't treat someone with dignity and respect, then you need to get out. If you can't teach someone from another gender, whether that's a man or a woman, with dignity and respect, then you need to get out. If you demean someone in any way, then you need to get out. And if you can't treat someone from another race or a different color skin with dignity and respect, then you need to get out. Reach for your phones. I'm serious. Reach for your phones. Okay, you don't have to reach for your phones. I'm going to give you an opportunity to reach for your phones. Grab your phones. I want you to videotape this so that you have it, so that you can use it. So that we all have the moral courage together. All of us on the staff tower, lining the glass, all of us in this room. This is our institution. And if you need it, and you need my words, then you keep these words. And you use them, and you remember them, and you share them, and you talk about them. If you can't treat someone with dignity and respect, then get out.
That's how you do it. I couldn't turn away from the general's words. No one should. They are a stark reminder of everything our president is not saying. The general knows there aren't many sides to racism. He knows people who protest inequality are not sons of bitches. The president should be ashamed of himself for dividing America when he could be bringing us together, dragging the country down instead of lifting us up. We need a leader. And that general, that speech, that's what a leader sounds like. That's what a leader looks like.
This nation was founded by men of many nations and backgrounds. It was founded on the principle that all men are created equal, and that the rights of every man are diminished when the rights of one man are threatened. It ought to be possible, in short, for every American to enjoy the privileges of being American without regard to his race or his color. In short, every American ought to have the right to be treated as he would wish to be treated, as one would wish his children to be treated. But this is not the case. 100 years of delay have passed since President Lincoln freed the slaves, yet their heirs, their grandsons, are not fully free. They are not yet freed from the bonds of injustice. They are not yet freed from social and economic oppression. And this nation, for all its hopes and all its boasts, will not be fully free until all its citizens are free. We are confronted primarily with a moral issue. It is as old as the Scriptures and is as clear as the American Constitution. It cannot be met by repressive police action. It cannot be left to increase demonstrations in the streets. It cannot be quieted by token moves or talk. It is a time to act in the Congress, in your state and local legislative body, and above all, in all of our daily lives. Those who do nothing are inviting shame as well as violence. Those who act boldly are recognizing right as well as reality.
If Monica Lewinsky says that while you were in the Oval Office area you touched her breast, would she be lying?
Let me say something about all this.
All I really need for you, Mr. President,
I know,
is to say I won't answer under the previous grounds or to answer the question. You see, because we only have 4 hours and your answers are extremely lengthy.
But go ahead and ask your questions.
The question is, if Monica Lewinsky says that while you were in the Oval Office area you touched her breast, would she be lying?
That is not my recollection. My recollection is that I did not have sexual relations with Ms. Lewinsky, and I'm staying on my former statement about that.
If she
my statement is that I did not have sexual relations as defined by that.
If she says that you kissed her breast, would she be lying?
I'm going to revert to my former statement.
Okay. If Monica Lewinsky says that while you were in the Oval Office area you touched her genitalia, would she be lying? That calls for a yes, no, or reverting to your former statement.
I will revert to my statement on that.
If Monica Lewinsky says that you used a cigar as a sexual aid with her in the Oval Office area, would you be lying? Yes, no, or won't answer?
I will revert to my former statement.
If Monica Lewinsky says that you had phone sex with her, would she be lying?
Well, that is, at least in general terms, I think is covered by my statement. I addressed that in my statement, and that I don't believe is...
Let me define phone sex for purposes of my question. Phone sex occurs when a party to a phone conversation masturbates while the other party is talking in a sexually explicit manner. And the question is, if Monica Lewinsky says that you had phone sex with her, would she be lying?
I think that is covered by my statement.
I have no doubt that I am Bill Clinton's son. It was common knowledge. Everyone in Arkansas knew. Everywhere I went, they pointed, that's Bill Clinton's son right there. He looked like him, don't he? The ears, the mouth, the chin, the teeth, the eyes, the nose. I see him in me. You can see a black Bill Clinton. When I brush my hair, I can see Bill Clinton with waves in his head. I always felt bad about him not wanting to be in my life. Was it because I was black? Was it something wrong with me? Why he don't want to be a part of me? It made me think of even sometimes suicide. It's not fair, and it has been hurtful. That he still refused to acknowledge me. Well, time was very hard, and my mom was a working girl on the streets. She was heavy on drugs.
My name is Lucia Bolton. My sister's Barbaric Williams, Danny Williams' mother. She was a prostitute, and she, hung around on the streets on 17th and Main. She met him on the streets.
I was told that she was with him on 13 occasions.
I don't know, about 5 or 6 months after, they had dated and everything. She said she was pregnant either.
My mom went to prison and lost custody of us. My Aunt Lucille stepped up and gained guardianship of us. She raised us in Little Rock, Arkansas. At the time, we was from group home to house. My Aunt Lucille wanted to have a father in my life. As a small child, she took me to the governor mansion.
There was a car coming at the front gate, right? When the gate swings open, I ran up in there and ran behind the gate, okay?
She was trying to get him to accept me and notice me.
When I got to the door, I asked for her, and the door was slammed in my face.
Slammed the door in her face. This is Bill's son. He had the black son out here.
And 2 little guys hit him off the side of the place.
Hillary, she had guys chase him off the property.
And I went to right and dropped the thing. Get the hell out of there.
I read history. Basically goes back to slave owners. When they have a child with one of their slaves and the wives try to have them banished off the plantation. What century is this? It just wasn't right.
Every child in this state is somebody because we're going to give them every chance we can.
And honestly, we were needing child support at the time. My mom was in prison.
We was poor, okay? We had nothing. Who gonna listen to us, really?
My Aunt Lucille was working at a gas station.
We have no money to pay lawyers. They just shut us up.
My mom told me on a few occasions where she was threatened.
She didn't talk, leave them alone because we gonna come up missing.
She was also pushed out a 2-story window where she got a metal plate in her foot. To this day, she still feels scared of speaking.
And they was trying to get information about Bobby Williams' story so they can give her, I guess some first money.
In fact, my mother did receive 7 $100 bills a month in the mailbox. Even presents on Christmas that was delivered to my home by state troopers. So I felt he was trying to be a part of my life. And then when he became president, everything stopped. In 1995, when my father was president of the United States, the state of Arkansas put us in foster care. I lived in foster homes. It made me feel horrible because I know his child, Chelsea, was well taken care of, and we was house to house, hungry at nights. And to know that my father was the president, it hurts. Try to imagine that your own father refused to love you, refused to say that you exist. Knowing who my father was and that he was so close yet so far away made my pain unbearable. Growing up in Little Rock school district system, it was difficulties because you got gang members, drug activities at the schools. And I wanted more to life. I didn't want to end up dead in the streets for nothing. Moving from home to home, not having a stable place to go. It came to a point in high school where I had to drop out to take care of my little sisters and brothers and make sure they were stable and able to go to school every day. I got a job full-time at a donut shop my 11th grade year to support my sisters and brothers. If I had the love and support of my father that stayed on me, made sure I had the best education, I feel I would have had a better life. In 1999, they tried to sweep me under the rug with Bill Clinton's friend publishing this phony DNA test. It never was a DNA test.
Roger Altman. Roger is a longtime friend of mine.
Just think about it. It was published in a tabloid owned by a donor of Bill Clinton. Even to this day, Megyn Kelly, Howard Kirk, they continue to quote this bogus DNA test, and it really hurts. I would love to see the DNA test done. Several times, I tried to reach out to the Clintons. People say all the time, you're gonna get yourself killed dealing with the Clintons. I wrote letters to his library. I wrote letters to addresses I got off the internet, even emailed him from Facebook on his Facebook pages. I never got any response back. Once in Little Rock, Arkansas, I visited the Clinton Library. I wanted to see how it felt to be his president, and he was speaking. But by the time we made it there, he was already gone. We took a tour through the library, and just to see all the things he'd done in the world, helping other kids in Haiti and, all the other places, it just saddened me because I never received any help from him. Hillary started running for president. She visited Little Rock at one of her campaign stops. I put myself right in front of the podium where she spoke. She was looking right at me, eye contact. In my heart, I was thinking she knew who I was.
I met with a small group of the Black Lives Matter activists.
It made me wonder if she's saying Black Lives Matter, why I don't matter to her.
And I just felt for them.
I was going to introduce myself as Danny Williams, her husband's son, and her stepson.
I am a new grandmother, in case you haven't heard.
I had millions of questions to ask, why?
We're going to do everything we can to make sure she has every opportunity.
As soon as she spoke, she got out of there. I didn't get to talk to my stepmom. I could never imagine having a child and not acknowledge him. I know how it feels to not have a parent in your life. I work construction. I am a person of faith. I take my kids to church every Sunday. I teach my sons how to keep bad language out your mouth, how to speak properly with yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. Recently, I've been telling my kids that their grandfather was the president of the United States. And they amazed by it. They're like, no, is it for real? And I tell them, yes, that is my father. And I'm gonna make sure you get to meet him one day. Hillary, please do not deny I exist. I am your stepson. Chelsea is my sister. And Bill is my father.
Super predators. We have to bring them to heel.
I felt bad when Hillary called black people super predators and that we need to be brought to heel. I'm black, I'm real, I am her stepson, and I deserve the love that she has given Chelsea. We hear my stepmother tells the nation every day, we're stronger together. They know who I am, and I know who I am. I have to meet my father. I have to know that he's willing to even accept me. I have to know that I don't know. Like any child, I want to know my dad and I want him to know me. I'm his only son in the world, and he's my only dad. We have to come together. We have to. If Black lives truly matter to you, please contact me.
Institutional racism is at the foundation of the American criminal justice system, and it permeates police culture in many cases from coast to coast. I decided to leave the police department because I was profoundly disillusioned with the United States criminal justice system and the racism at its foundation and the impact that has nationally on communities of color everywhere, black and brown communities. Historically, black officers, Latino officers, minority officers have not held enough positions of power and authority in terms of rank, in terms of administration, to protect themselves when they challenge the culture, when they challenge the system. And retribution is usually swift and is very real. One of the first things that you heard from your training officer or the officers around you was, forget that BS they just told you in the academy. We're going to show you how to be the police. Forget all of that political correctness and all of that, other stuff. Here's how we get down. Mainstream America is only now becoming more aware because now the prevalence of cell phone cameras, video cameras, and other recording devices has finally allowed them to see what people have been telling them for generations now. When you see Eric Garner murdered on the street as he pleaded for his life with 4 officers having him in control, in their custody, having him in control, and he is pleading for his life and announcing that he can't breathe, they have an opportunity to stop choking him. They have an opportunity to get off of him. But they continued and persisted, and he died. And they had, I promise you, zero expectation of accountability. And there was none. But the fact that somebody is paying attention to you do your job should in no way prohibit you or inhibit you from doing your job. That makes me question your motivation or what you're really about as a police officer. If, hey man, you can't record me while I'm on duty. Why not? First order of business when it comes to changing this system is accountability. Accountability. You need to be punished. When you violate the civil rights and civil liberties and the right to life of the citizens you're in service to, in violation of the Constitution and your own policy, punishment is the first order of the day.
Advances in genealogical DNA testing have raised existential questions for many, but not much compares to the experience of Albert Perry, whose genetic material offers new clues about the origin of the human species. An African-American man from South Carolina, Perry let a relative send in his DNA for analysis, but when the testing company tried to track his Y chromosome, they simply couldn't. Further research revealed that Perry's Y chromosome came from a lineage that broke off from other species about 338,000 years ago. That's long before the first Homo sapiens, or modern humans, evolved some 195,000 years ago, making our Y chromosome lineage much longer than geneticists believed.
So here's the thing. I'm 53, and so racism is generational, meaning that racism has changed over the years from what it used to be in the 60s and the 70s, even in the 80s. Racism these days is more subtle. My concern, my fear, I have a 30-year-old son and a 24-year-old daughter. My concern for them is that this generation is angry, but this generation isn't getting together to collectively do something about the issue. So while my generation was about the awareness, you have to be aware, you have to go out there, you have to create the movement. We would sit in, sit out, stand up, stand out. This generation is like, well, I really don't need to do that because I can sit anywhere I want to. I can live anywhere I want to. I can go anywhere that I want to. This is the thing. The mentality of the individuals who practice racism has not changed. The only thing that's changed is the way in which they express it. Racism is something that is taught. You are taught, don't like that person because they're black. If you look at 2 little children, 3, 4, 5 children playing in a park, they want to play because they're all little kids. They get older and they're told, no, you can't do this. Timmy can't play with Jaquanda. It just doesn't happen. Chica, get out of the road. This is New York. So the issue is that this generation needs to recognize, even though you think you can live anywhere, you try moving into an all-white neighborhood where they really don't want you, the cross will come. they will still burn it. So it's not that we can truly live anywhere we want to, it's just that we have more areas that we can live. The reason that we're not as dedicated as a group to fighting the issue of racism is because before we were all subjected to live in one location, in one area. We supported each other in our black businesses. That's why you had black millionaires. What do we do now? We give other people our money. If all black people stop going to the movie theater, guess what? None of those movies that are hits would be hits. Why? Because ain't nobody go to the movies like black folks. We spend our money, but we don't go to see our movies. We go to see other people's movies. And so they say, since nobody goes to see black movies, then they go, we're not going to make any black movies. Back in the day when you could only go to the all-Negro theater, guess what? Everybody went. Everybody supported it. Now that we have choices, we've left our people behind. So my recommendation, my suggestion, my commitment, my prayer, my hope for your generation is love what you're doing, but you got to recognize that the power is in the numbers. The power is in doing it together. The power is in being a collective, cohesive unit, which we're not. Other races recognize that about us, and so from even a financial perspective of how we spend money, that's where the racism comes into play. They won't go into our stores, but they want our money. They won't come into our neighborhoods, but they want us to spend money in their neighborhoods. They won't come into a black car dealership, but we're the ones who drive some of the very, very expensive cars. So it's not that we don't have the money, we just need to be educated about how we spend it, because we have more power than we realize. We just don't know how to utilize and wield that power. If black people, nobody else but black people, decided that they were going to stop for one day, a 24-hour period, to stop spending, they would be amazed at the impact they would have. But no matter how much black people get together and say they're going to do that, there's always somebody somewhere who is like, I'm going to go to that gas station anyway. I'm going to go to that place anyway. And that's why it doesn't change and it doesn't end. But make no mistake, racism in America is alive and well. It has not died. It has not changed. This experience that my daughter had 3 weeks ago in Stone Mountain shows me that there's a whole other generation of people out there proposing racism, supporting it. They truly believe in it. The next time you're in a mall and a white person bounces into you, see if they say sorry. They don't even see you. They don't know you're there. So it's not that they're being rude. Honestly, they don't see you. It's called being invisible. I'm not American. This has been an amazing experience for me coming to this country as an adult, having children in a society that I don't know anything about, coming from a country where everybody is black and we don't refer to people by color. You have to learn how to adapt to this environment. My request of your generation is explore outside the boundaries of America, because what it is that you're trying to do, it may not necessarily survive here, but there are other places where you can truly live, be powerful, be wonderful, be free. But having to do that in America is going to take far, far more time, far more commitment, far more collective, cohesive movement than this place has ever been seen. And there aren't enough people who are aware of that to be able to do it together. But understand this, racism has not died and will never die if you know the history of America.
Recently, or just wrote an op-ed in USA Today about everything we saw this weekend with NFL football.
Yes.
What are your thoughts just on kind of what's happening?
You know, I got to tell you, yesterday, I was at 9 o'clock in the morning, I went over and visited with a gentleman by the name of Mr. Alex Amparo, who is the head of FEMA, okay? I sat in this man's office and he said to me, there are 5.6 million Americans right now suffering from storms. The biggest tragedy this country has faced. Now listen to me. I put my hand in the air and I took an oath of office. That oath was, I do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Every soldier who wore a uniform took that same oath. I didn't say I swear allegiance to a song, to a piece of cloth, to the Constitution, which allows for freedom of speech. I was willing to take a bullet for that. Okay? Now, we're all acting like we're upset because somebody seems to have offended you patriotically, and the majority of people I hear opening their mouths, they didn't put a uniform on their back, their children didn't put a uniform on their back, they didn't serve, and they didn't even think of serving. So how dare you disrespect those who've been shot for freedom of speech by telling people to shut up? I stand for the national anthem. I sing. Go back and check it. In the history of television, I'm the only person to put the U.S. flag in the middle of their set for 10 years on my show. That was a flag I'm going to be buried in. But I respect your right to disagree any way you choose to.
Wow.
Our Constitution confirmed that you can burn a flag. Excuse me. How dare we not allow people to get down on their knees and pray that this country wakes up? That's what's going on. Sorry.
I know you are so passionate. I know you are so passionate about this. You're saying we can respectfully disagree. Our Constitution allows for it.
Our Constitution denies you the right to have forced patriotic assembly. Okay? Let's get this straight. And again, I'm sorry. I got to say it to some people. I see a lot of people opening their big mouths on television. Their family didn't serve. They didn't let their children serve. They relegated it to some of the people that they want to throw out of the country now that wore a uniform. Because over 40% of people in the military are people of some sort of color. Let's stop this stupid before this doesn't exist anymore. Sorry.
No need
No
to be
need,
sorry.
no need to be sorry, Montel.
No need to be sorry. We love seeing that passion from anybody, you know, and we're thankful that you shared that.
Thanks. Sorry. Okay.
Right.
I'm sorry. Let's lighten this up a little bit. Sorry about
you know
that.
what? Don't be sorry to feel what you feel. I think you're in a safe place. Here on Great Day Washington, we lift people up. We don't tear them down. You're in a safe place to say what you want to say and feel what you feel. And so we thank you for that. And that's why we love you. And that's why you have people jumping on the couch when you show up in the morning.
Thank you. No,
right?
Thank you. Thank you.
Take a Knee, a movement started by Colin Kaepernick to protest social injustice. But since the beginning, the movement has been misunderstood, hijacked, and whitewashed. I mean, now the movement is essentially everything except what it was meant to be. Ladies and gentlemen, here is why Cap took a knee. Colin Kaepernick first set out the national anthem in August 2016, about a month after police shot and killed Alton Sterling and Philando Castile, and 2 years after the Black Lives Matter movement gained national attention.
This country stands for freedom, liberty, justice for all, and it's not happening for all right now.
After sitting out the anthem for 3 preseason games, Cap met with former NFL player and Army veteran Nate Boyer, who helped him decide to kneel rather than sit.
Soldiers take a knee in front of a fallen brother's grave, to show respect.
There's a lot of things that need to change. Police brutality. There's people being murdered unjustly.
You hear that? Police brutality. People being murdered. That is the crux of Cap's protest. It's no secret that there's a culture of institutionalized violence towards people of color in the U.S. I mean, open your eyes.
You can become a cop in 6 months and don't have to have the same amount of training as a cosmetologist. That's insane.
One study found that black men are nearly 3 times as likely to be killed by legal intervention than white men. And Latino men are twice as likely. Out of the 1,155 people killed by police in 2016, there have only been 13 charges, and so far, no convictions. Kaepernick is protesting a systemic oppression that is pervasive in the United States. The hashtags for the slain, unarmed black and brown people are unending.
He's exercising his constitutional right to make a statement. I think there's a long history of sports figures doing so.
We're talking about freedom of speech here, folks, but as Kaepernick's protests continued, the disdain for his activism only grew. Cap's jersey has been burned, used as a doormat, And the man's been called everything but a child of God.
Whiny, indulgent, attention-seeking crybaby.
He's exercising the right to remain a jerk.
But his following, it's grown as well. Pro athletes have taken a knee, along with high school athletes, cheerleaders, bands, police officers, and veterans. Hell, even people with bad knees have taken a knee. And then this happened.
Wouldn't you love to see one of these NFL owners, when somebody disrespects our flag, to say, get that son of a bitch off the field right now? He's fired!
Listen up. It's not about making America great again. And frankly, it's not about the president, though he is clearly a symptom of this racist and troubled American system. A spray-tan symbol of white supremacy. Colin Kaepernick's protest is about injustice. It's about inequality. It's about the unarmed black and brown people who have died at the hands of police. It's about Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, Eric Garner, Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, Charlena Lyles, Tamir Rice, and Freddie Gray, to name a few. So when you see NFL owners and their teams taking a knee for a photo op, for unity and ultimately against Trump's comments, that's not in solidarity with the initial protest, and it's problematic. Or when Sports Illustrated tried to be in solidarity, how are you going to try to be about a movement when you excluded the man behind the movement from the cover? I'm just saying. Over a year after Kaepernick first sat out the anthem, he's unsigned. But the significance of his protest is invaluable. Say their names, but most importantly, take a stand. Even if taking a stand brings you to a knee. Colin Kaepernick, we salute you.
I just want to know if y'all gonna give Kaepernick his job back. I mean, come on, ain't nobody saying it, nobody's talking about it. The man took a knee for something that he believed in. Donald Trump, he calls out all the NFL owners. And now owners and players across the country are now taking the knee. They're following Kaepernick's example. So realistically, shouldn't Cap get his job back? Shouldn't one of those NFL owners pick up Kaepernick? I mean, they did it, right? They took the knee too. People want to bicker back and forth about patriotism and, oh, they're disrespecting the flag and all of that other stuff. Well, let's look at this here. While you're upset, Sundays or whenever you watch football, you're sitting at home on your couch or you at a bar with your friends. When the national anthem plays, do you stand up? No. You sit your butt on the couch and you drink a beer and you watch everyone else stand. You watch everyone else put their hand over their heart and you do nothing. So, how patriotic are you? And the majority of you didn't even know that the national anthem has racial and prejudice undertones. You wouldn't know the lyrics say, "No refuge could save the hireling slave from the terror of flight and the gloom of the grave." Why? Because they cut that part out of the song. Around the country, they only sing the first verse of the national anthem. There's 4 verses to that song. We leave out the part of slavery. We leave out the bigotry that's in the song that we're supposed to be so proud of when the song talks about enslaving my people, talks about killing slaves. And when a black man kneels, you're offended. They left that part out of the song. So if you really want to be upset, if you're really about freedom and patriotism and the land of the free, you should be upset about that. But no, you picking and choosing when you want to get mad and when you don't. See, I was born here. I was born in America. Therefore, when I see an American get mistreated, when I see Americans get killed, when I hear about soldiers dying on the battlefield, I don't ask what color they are. They're Americans. If I see a Latino brother, a Muslim brother, a white brother, an Asian brother getting mistreated, my heart beats for them. And I feel for injustices, period. But I don't see that from y'all, though. I call bullshit.
Or are you just another nigger that doesn't understand anything? Black people were bought by a contract, and we got ripped off because y'all should have got returned when there was evidence and proof that y'all couldn't do anything. Hey, spread this. It's okay, spread this. People need to, hey, I hope, I'm looking at the camera now, not you. Black lives do not matter.
You're offended when Obama talks about gun control. You believe in the NRA. You're a proud member of the National Rifles Association. But how come you're not upset when a black man who is carrying his arms legally, as you do, gets shot and killed? Oh, then it's when a black man carries a gun. Oh, now it's a problem. But you have United States government officials bringing pistols on stage. It's all good. It's all American. It's all patriotic. It's, NRA. It's, hey, come on now. Y'all see what I'm talking about. I didn't really want to, I really wanted to stay away from this subject. I really didn't want to get controversial, but excuse my language. I see too much bull right now. People aren't stupid. You see what's going on. You show outrage for the things that you believe in, but then you remain quiet when those same things that you believe in happen to people that don't look like you. It's a lot of closet racists out here, and you see them on our timelines now. You're starting to see who your friends really are. You're starting to see who your neighbors really are. And that's the beauty about this whole thing. I'd rather a thief tell me he's a thief than to act like he's my friend. And now they have a presidential elected official who can now speak about those things and spew that type of language that they've been feeling in their heart for years. Since when do we have a president that uses profanity and calls people a son of a bitch from the White House? He's essentially doing all the things you was afraid that Obama would do. You thought a black president would do these things. These stereotypes that you hold for black people that you think makes up black people, your boy Trump is doing it. He talks out of his ass. He's always angry, always attacking people. He's the angry black man, but he's orange. He's hired all of his friends, put all of his friends in the White House. You rarely ever see him spend time with his kids. He's in a loveless, broken marriage, makes up his own words, can barely even read from a teleprompter. There's people suffering in Puerto Rico right now, and this guy's talking about football. And he uses profanity and curses from the White House floor. I mean, this guy is more of a nigger than the people you call niggers. We all got the same news channel. We all got the same internet. We all see the same things. Yet you are choosing what you want to see and what you want to acknowledge and what you don't. You're not fooling nobody. Some of y'all are from your ivory towers. You're living in these nice neighborhoods and you don't see what's going on. You don't see the rights that are being stripped from people. But you know who sees it? My white friends and the white brothers and sisters who have black friends. I'm not talking about just one black friend. A lot of racist people try to say, I'm not racist. I got a black friend. But your black friend looks like Ben Carson. He acts, talks, walks like Ben Carson. I'm talking about a real black. I'm talking about white people that really hang with black people. They got more than one black friend. Or they're married to a black person. They have a mixed half black child. They see what's going on. And they are standing and fighting for us.
Tonight, hit and kicked in the face by police, now calling for those officers to be charged as criminal.
Any videos of problems, but you're not black. Remember, we only kill black people. Yeah, we only kill black people, right?
Don't be fooled. All white people aren't racist, just like all black people aren't thugs. Contrary to what the news says, to what they're showing you, we are more united than what they want you to believe. And I was out there. I saw thousands of white people saying Black Lives Matter. I saw those same white people get tackled down by the police. So don't get it twisted. They are standing and fighting for us. When those racist bigots came down to Charlottesville, being tiki torch terrorists, waving Nazi flags, beating people up, hitting people with cars, causing riots in the city, as Donald Trump would say, those fine citizens, they went to work on Monday. They didn't lose their jobs. That's that good old American job security. Don't let your president fool you. America's already great. And let's keep it that way by holding true to the things that make us great. Democracy, diversity, that's what makes us great. In conclusion, just because you're not experiencing injustices doesn't mean it's not happening. If an old lady gets robbed around the corner, did it not happen because you didn't see it? If a tree falls in the forest, does it not make a sound just because you didn't hear it? Come on, people. You guys got to be smarter than that. And I'm going to say this. I'm going to end it on this. I don't care if you're Democrat. I don't care if you're Republican. I might be black. You might be white, Asian, Middle Eastern, Latino. We playing for the same team, the human race. We all want to be great. We all want to be free. We all want to be loved. Let's lead by example. It's your boy, Cali. Keeping it 100, always. Somebody got to do it.
I said, if I were black, they'd have killed me a long time ago. And if I were black and saying the things I say, I wouldn't be alive.
Bullshit! No, you're not gonna say, I'm sorry there's racism. No, I do not have to ask you nicely. I consider this exercise an injection of the live virus of racism. I watched my students become what I told them they were. I watched little, wonderful, brown-eyed white people become vicious, ugly, nasty, discriminating, domineering people in the space of 15 minutes. I watched brilliant, little, blue-eyed, white Christian children become timid and frightened and angry and unable to learn in the space of 15 minutes. If you do that with a whole group of people for a lifetime, you change them psychologically. You convince those who are analogous to the brown-eyed people that they are superior, that they are perfect, that they have the right to rule.
Did you learn anything this morning?
I think I learned from the experience of feeling like I was in a glass cage and I was powerless. I realized this morning that there were very few times in my life that I've ever been discriminated against, very few.
And you convince those who take the place of the blue-eyed students that they are less than.
How did they feel yesterday? Down like a dog on a leash.
If you do that for a lifetime, what do you suppose that does to them? You find out that there are people of color who refuse to live down to our expectations of them. I am now watching, at the national level, that exercise that I did based on eye color being reenacted in the government of the United States of America. I've done this with people of all ages for the last 50 years. Now think about that. Next year it will be the 50th anniversary of the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. and the beginning of the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. When are we going to learn? When are we going to put a stop to this?
White people's #1 freedom in the United States of America is the freedom to be totally ignorant about those who are other than white.
We live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. White people are the free, and people of color have to be brave. I want this situation to change. I want it to be such that no black person has to have courage to get up in the morning, any more than I, as a white person, have to have courage to get up in the morning. This is the most important book you or I or anybody else will ever read. I'm an educator. Every educator should refuse to perpetuate the myth of white superiority. There's only one race. It's the human race.
What's good? My name is Charity Crump. Did you know that the guy who created the word Homo sapiens also created what we call race? Yeah, Carl Linnaeus, the founder of biology, put us in 4 groups: European, African, Asiatic, and the wild man of America. Then he gave each race characteristics. The European was gentle, inventive, and governed by laws. The Asiatic was severe, covetous, and governed by opinions. The African was lazy, negligent, and greasy. And the wild man of America was obstinate and content-free. This was in the first biology book, people. But see, none of these races actually existed. The entire idea that there even are races was only created in order to prove the superiority of white people. Tell him, Jacob.
It all started with the Spanish Inquisition. Columbus got lost in America and ran into these red people. Well, basically they started killing them, taking over their land, and they needed to justify what they were doing. So they started calling them the barbaric red man who wasn't really human, the savage Indian who was incapable of running their own world, incapable of becoming Christian, wasn't even created by God. They made up this whole story that any people that weren't white must not have come from Adam and Eve and thus weren't even human at all.
It's like those zombie video games where you just shoot all the zombies. I mean, they're not human, so just kill them. Obviously, it was proven that all humans are human, so then they just said that we all degenerated from white people. The scientists of the time assumed that humans must have started white and then devolved darker and darker. As people moved from their beautiful European origins, they gradually became less white and thus less human. Johann Blumenbach is the guy who created anthropology and the word Caucasian. He believed that the original white man was the most beautiful and closest to representing God's image. Because even anthropology was only created to prove the superiority of white people.
I know by now you're thinking, man, white people are interesting. But so-called black people of today mirror this same exact type of thinking. The Nation of Islam teaches that black people are the true humans created by God, and that a mad scientist named Yaqub grafted the evil white devil from black people. But where did this idea that evilness can be inherited through genes even come from?
Probably from the same people who created race. Paracelsus lectured that all non-white people came from the same being that created nymphs and griffins and were essentially beings without souls. That may sound like crazy talk, but a lot of us black people believe a similar type of logic today. Dr. Layla Africa and Carol Barnes are huge leaders in the so-called woke movement that's happening today. They believe that melanin, in addition to making our skin dark, is the reason that black people are not aggressive savages. According to them, how civilized the human is directly correlates with the amount of melanin they have. And without just the right amount of melanin, you don't have access to the spiritual realms and you are soulless. Isn't it interesting that this is the exact same thing that whites said about blacks when race was first invented? So you know David Hume and Immanuel Kant, they were the fathers of the Enlightenment. They created the idea of morality. They argued that never was a civilized nation of any other complexion but white. During this time of social Darwinism, people thought that whites ruled because of survival of the fittest, and thus treating all other races like crap was the moral thing to do. They claimed colored people created no arts and sciences and have never developed beyond barbarism. And today we say the same about whites. We say they stole everything from Egyptians and other cultures, and essentially they have no culture. White people can't dance. Black people have soul. Asians do math. Mexicans work hard. All of these stereotypes we assign to race when race itself is imaginary.
No, Charity. We can see race. Whites and blacks can be told apart just as easily as chihuahuas and pit bulls. What next? Are you going to tell us that dog breeds don't exist?
Yes, I am. This social construct that we know as dog breeds is just the result of people mating dogs that had a certain look with other dogs that looked similar. They did it over and over until they created this very incestual thing that we call breeds. What we now know as mutts are actually normal dogs. And what we call purebreds is just the Frankenstein creation of people mating dogs with their brothers and sisters until they looked like it was a breed. Dog breeds didn't even exist before about 100 years ago, and dog breeding became popular at the exact same time that human breeding became popular. It was called eugenics, the plan to create a superior Aryan race, blonde hair, blue eyes. The creator of psychology, William James, came up with the idea of human instinct and believed that drunkenness, insanity, prostitution, and criminal behavior were all the inherited traits of people without pure blood. Psychology was created to prove the superiority of white people. They believed intelligence was an inherited trait. Louis Terman, the guy who invented the IQ test, wanted to prove that Anglo-Saxon Nordic Europeans were the only intelligent people. The test included questions such as,
Christy Mathewson is famous as Becky Sharp appears in.
These were stupid questions that you wouldn't know the answer to if you weren't rich and white, and thus everyone who wasn't rich and white failed and was scientifically proven to be inferior. And they blamed it all on your DNA. This same idea of character traits being biological eventually led to the Nazis, Adolf Hitler, the Nation of Islam, 5%ers, the KKK, and every other organization that aims to prove that there are innate racial differences. There are mean black people and amazing black people.
Woke whites, horrible whites.
World-conquering Asians, enlightened Asians.
Nice pit bulls, mean chihuahuas.
And actually none of that is true because the distinctions between all of them are completely made up. What's the difference between these two people?
I know. One is white and one is black.
No, the truth is both Barack Obama and Logic are half black and white. But since one appears more white, we call him white, and the other appears more black, so we call him black. There is no natural definition of racist, and we made all of that up to prove the superiority of white people. Race is fake, but racism is real, and the only way to eliminate racism is to start teaching the absolute fact that there is no such thing as race. At that point, racism will not have a context to even exist within. We humans just want to categorize things and prove our theories. Two people look different, so they must be different. Most white people rule the world, so they must be evil. Most black people are less educated than white people, so they must be dumb. The real truth, though, is always much more complex, and every culture has a slew of historical circumstances that created what we see today. The only true evil that lies within the human is the ego. The idea that you and I are different, and since we are different, one of us must be better. This is an evil that lies deep within all humans and is the surest proof that we are all the same. Unlearn, open your mind, and start over. I love you.
Throughout human existence, hemp has been used as an important source of fuel, clothing, shelter, and even food for people all over the world. In this country, industrial hemp was widely cultivated since America's first settlers arrived in the early 1600s. In fact, even our founding fathers acknowledged hemp's enormous benefits. George Washington, John Adams, and Thomas Jefferson all grew hemp on their private farms. And Jefferson was even quoted once as saying hemp is one of the greatest important substances of our nation. The Declaration of Independence itself was even drafted on paper derived from hemp. So what happened? How did one of the most versatile and adaptable species of crops in the world also become one of the most politically polarizing agricultural resources? Well, in the early 20th century, the plant became labeled a threat so dangerous that it should be wiped out. But it wasn't dangerous to anyone or anything except the industries that it could phase out of existence. So what did the establishment do to ensure their allegiance to the very industries they serve? Well, they did what they do best. They lied and smeared hemp through a propaganda campaign that associated the plant with marijuana. And in 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act redefined hemp as a narcotic, which required farmers to obtain a special tax stamp to grow the crop. By 1970, the Controlled Substances Act made growing the crop without a DEA-issued permit strictly illegal. Because of the government crackdown on the crop, it has a negative association. And at this point, you still might be confused because of years of being brainwashed to think that hemp is exactly the same as marijuana, or that its close association with it must classify it as a drug. But this couldn't be farther from the truth. Just check out the Congressional Research Service report on hemp that states, quote, although marijuana is also a variety of cannabis, it is genetically distinct from industrial hemp, and it is further distinguished by its use and chemical makeup. So, hemp is genetically distinct from the drug, marijuana. In fact, if you smoked an entire garbage bag full of hemp, you wouldn't get high. Yet the plant remains illegal under U.S. federal law. And like I said before, not because it's a danger to people, but because it's a danger to corporations. In the early 20th century, hemp competed heavily with the cotton and paper industry. Because paper made from trees had to compete against environmentally friendly hemp products, the paper industry was at risk to suffer. So, William Hearst, a New York State congressman and one of the biggest newspaper publishers in America, launched a campaign against hemp. He used his publication to smear the public's perception of the crop, which at the same time was threatening his successful paper company. In fact, this very campaign is where the term yellow journalism derived from. But this was in the 1920s. How is the propaganda still working today? Because the threat hemp poses isn't limited to paper. Reviving the industry could potentially devastate the profits of huge corporations that manufacture lumber, fossil fuels, steel, alcohol, and even food, among many other things, including this. In 1941, Henry Ford even built a car made almost entirely from hemp. The frame of the car was 12 times lighter than steel and 10 times stronger. Not only that, but the car was powered by hemp seed oil. Do I even have to explain the threat that this technology would pose to giant oil companies? Processed hemp also creates one of the strongest fibers we know of, providing all natural materials to build homes, ships, trains, planes, and automobiles, and practically indestructible clothing. Furthermore, hemp seed oil can be made into lotions and skin creams. The practical applications for this plant are limitless, and the reason it remains illegal is simple. It's just one giant push to preserve the profits of corporations that poison our planet, destroy our forests, and bankrupt the world.
America is threatened by a new drug menace. Street corner vendors whose stock in trade is the deadly local weed marijuana pass it out in cigarette form. From ingeniously concealed containers, the reefers go to the waiting hands of deluded youngsters.
Marijuana, the dried leaves and flowers of the Indian hempweed, is used in the form of a cigarette. Marijuana smoking, experts point out, can make a helpless addict of its victim within weeks, causing physical and moral ruin and death.
Let's go, Jack. I'm red hot.
Every reefer is loaded with immorality and bestial perversions, brutality, murder, sex crimes, insanity, or suicide.
Should you ever be confronted with the temptation of taking that first puff of a marijuana cigarette, don't do it.
I've introduced a bill to legalize marijuana on the federal level and do what is necessary to begin to heal the savage effects of the war on drugs in so many of our communities. The war on drugs we've seen now for 30, 40 plus years has really been a war on people, on poor people, on minorities, on those who are addicted to drugs or mentally ill, even our veterans. And so my legislation focuses on a number of things. First and foremost, to deschedule marijuana, to no longer make it an illegal controlled substance. Number two is we should expunge the records of those people who've been arrested, been charged, been convicted, and are out now. Number three, it allows people that are in jail for marijuana-related crimes to petition the judge for resentencing. This bill for marijuana would say if you are in a state that has a disproportionate impact of your marijuana enforcement on poor people or minorities, we're going to incentivize you to stop doing that. We're creating reinvestment funds for things like job training and re-entry and things that can actually heal and begin to repair communities. States like Washington and Colorado have legalized marijuana, and they've actually seen violent crime go down. They've seen revenue in their states coming in. We on the federal government should do the right thing and help to not only end the prohibition of marijuana, but also invest in our communities so we make them stronger, more economically vibrant, more fair, and more just. Please join with me. Support this legislation. Let's make marijuana legal, but let's also invest in undoing the damage done by a war gone horribly wrong.
Excuse me. Hi. I'll be right with you.
En casos en donde la salud está en riesgo, la desobediencia. No tengo miedo porque creo que estoy defendiendo algo justo, la salud de mi hijo. Diego tiene un diagnóstico de epilepsia, tiene autismo y tiene parálisis cerebral. Decidí hacerlo para probar. Mi hijo tiene 10 años y desde el año y medio ha vivido con medicamentos. Diego siempre ha tenido mucha dificultad motriz, sobre todo fina, ¿no? O sea, no tenía capacidad de hacer muñequitos de palitos y bolitas. Ahorita ya intenta escribir su nombre. Tiene interés por saber qué dice un letrero. Es frustrante ver que cuando descubres algo tan bueno, sea perseguido por el Estado, ¿no? Si habemos mamás, si habemos personas haciendo esto de manera ilegal es porque nuestro sistema de salud no nos ofrece otras alternativas. Como más seguridad, saber que es una planta que está bien, que no tiene químicos.
gente que viene en ese tipo de taller es la gente que ya se cansó de esperar la respuesta de los médicos, la respuesta de los políticos, la respuesta de las autoridades sanitarias.
Creo que debería de estar legalizado el uso del cannabis medicinal, también el autocultivo, porque ¿de qué sirve esté legalizada si nos lo quieren vender?
How you feeling? It's been a bit of a rough week, really. And the best way to take it is put it under your tongue and rub it in your cheek. Don't do too much, you're going to be asleep all afternoon. You know what you should do? No. Don't try to communicate, just relax. See what happens. I think you're calmed down. So quickly. Isn't that amazing?
He used just a single drop, and his hands afterwards were rock steady, and the dyskinesia left.
Your voice is coming back. It works most of the time. In fact, it's... Did you guys eat lunch?
Are you hungry now?
20 a.m. Actually,
A person like me could really use marijuana. It makes me pretty angry that I can't get it in my home state.
I am probably one of the biggest proponents of cannabis that never smokes it. Like silver, I believe that it is a threat to the generational debt-based debt and death Ponzi scheme in which we live in. I believe that cannabis is a gift from God, and that it is a direct threat to many of the industries that fund this debt and death paradigm. Just like when I explored the silver story, the more that I looked into cannabis, the more that I became aware of its incredible potential in a post-dollar paradigm. My hope is with this video that it gets people to at least question their perceived reality of cannabis, much like how you might have done when you first started looking into the silver story. As you know, I grew up a staunch Republican, Marine, businessman, and stayed away from cannabis because of the propaganda and the intense legal ramifications associated with it. As I awoke to the illusion of our political and financial reality, I went on a path of questioning everything else, from spirituality to drugs to human consciousness. There I found the real reason why cannabis is illegal, because it is a powerful weapon against the debt and death paradigm. Cannabis has been used throughout history on every continent and by every civilization. Cannabis is the strongest natural fiber. It was used for rope, parachutes, a replacement for steel, and even the word canvas comes from the word cannabis. It easily grows everywhere and is actually used to reclaim land once abandoned. It grows in poor soil conditions and can grow more crops and yield more plant matter than most other crops out there. In 1619, the King of England ordered farmers in the American colonies that they, quote, must grow cannabis, and even allowed people to pay their taxes in cannabis. George Washington grew cannabis, and even the Declaration of Independence was written on it. By 1850, there were over 8,000 plantations of 2,000 acres or more that grew cannabis. Cannabis was so prevalent that it was actually pictured on the 1914 $10 Federal Reserve note that showed the wealth of our nation in manufacturing and agriculture, specifically the cannabis harvest featured on the left. With the abolition of slavery in 1865, there was not really an economical way of processing cannabis until 1935, when the decorticator made cannabis extremely economical, and it was named the next billion-dollar crop by Popular Mechanics, since it can be used in 25,000 products, from dynamite to cellophane. In fact, if you look at all the uses of cannabis, it's not so much a crop as it is an industry. With the new uses and devalued dollar of today, cannabis would not be a billion-dollar crop. I believe it would be a trillion-dollar industry. The most basic reason why cannabis is illegal is simple economics. What would the effect of cannabis being legalized to the paper, corn, cotton, alcohol, tobacco, prescription drug, prison, and even banking industries? How many of the 45 million Americans hooked on powerful antidepressants that have been known to cause homicidal and suicidal psychotic breaks would be better off smoking cannabis? How many less prisoners, prisons, police, court, drug raids, seizures would there be if cannabis was made legal? How much money would the medical and industrial complex lose if people knew that cannabis cured cancer, like in this recent Harvard study? How much money and power would flow out of the money centers if nature was made legal? The person perhaps most responsible for making cannabis illegal is William Randolph Hearst. You know, that billionaire, megalomaniac, propagandist warmonger that is depicted in Citizen Kane, pining over a childhood toy on his deathbed after wasting his entire life pursuing power over others.
Delightful in Cuba, stop. Could send you prose poems about scenery, but don't feel right spending your money. Stop. There is no war in Cuba. Signed, Wheeler. Any answer?
Yes, dear Wheeler, you provide the prose poems. I'll provide the war.
That's fine, Mr.
When he was not starting the Spanish-American War for American imperialism with his yellow journalism, he was the chief propagandist against cannabis, because now with the decorticator in 1935, cannabis became a huge threat to the millions he had invested in the timber industry. After all, cannabis can yield much more paper in less time and impact than logging. He set about to make a new drug called marijuana illegal, because if he called it cannabis, people would have thought he was crazy, since it was so prevalent in everyone's world. William Randolph Hearst printed racist stories about blacks and Hispanics raping white women, and soon after, Reefer Madness was released in 1936, showing people having psychotic and murderous breaks.
But at a terrible price. Debauchery, violence, murder, suicide, and the ultimate end of the marijuana addict. Hopeless insanity. See this important bill now, before it is too late.
Cannabis is so versatile that Henry Ford actually made a car out of hemp fiber that was lighter than steel and 10 times as strong. Here's a video of a man using an axe on the hemp car to demonstrate how strong it is.
The magic ingredient is hemp. It's in the body panels, it's in the rear spoiler, and it's also being used in the manufacture of the seats.
Take a look at the exterior of the house. This is hempcrete. It's a mixture of hemp, lime, and water.
Henry Ford not only used hemp fiber to build the car, he even used hemp oil to fuel it. In fact, Rudolf Diesel, who invented the diesel engine, originally used hemp oil to power his car. Meanwhile, John D. Rockefeller was dumping gasoline into the Cuyahoga River because he had no use for gasoline, and it caused the river to burn. John D. Rockefeller immediately moved to have the gasoline engine become the standard of the auto industry, because it served his industry over the farmers that would have benefited from the industrial use of hemp oil. Prohibition of alcohol lasted from 1919 to 1933. The federal government used it as a way to push its federal power on the states and created this huge bureaucracy to fight alcohol. When alcohol was made legal again, the government shifted to narcotics, and the number one on that list was cannabis, which accounts for over 80% of the, quote, illicit drug use. Harry Anslinger was the head of the newly created division of the Treasury Department called the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. He declared on this new drug called marijuana, saying, quote, "Reefer makes the darkies think they're as good as white men. Marijuana leads to pacifism and communist brainwashing. You smoke a joint and you're likely to kill your brother. Marijuana is the most violent causing drug in the history of mankind." So between racism and the false belief that it will make blacks pacified communist murderers, the marijuana tax passed in 1937 with little or no debate, and most congressmen didn't even know cannabis was included in this, since they called it marijuana. By making easily grown cannabis illegal, it also gave support to the centralized drug trade that the Anglo-American Empire runs, going all the way back to the British East Indian Company, the Opium Wars, and even today with Dick Grasso trying to get the FARC and Colombia to invest in the stock market, and HSBC laundering drug money even today. Things that cannot go on forever won't. After spending trillions of dollars over the next few decades on a failed drug war, we now have more prisoners in the prison industrial complex of America than Stalin ever had in his gulags. I believe that like the last Great Depression made alcohol legal, This next greatest depression will make nature legal once again with cannabis. If it was not a threat to power, then why on earth would they make it illegal? After all, there is not one death ever in thousands of years attributed to smoking cannabis.
A councilman from Dearborn, Michigan is outraged over a 911 call. He wants to know why no charges have been filed against a police officer who admits to confiscating marijuana from suspects and then baking it in brownies. And once he and his wife were full and high, they thought they'd overdosed and called 911.
I think I'm having an overdose, and so is my wife.
Overdose of what?
Marijuana. I don't know if it had something in it. Can you please send rescue?
Did you guys have fever or anything?
No, I think we're dying.
Okay, how much did you guys have?
I don't know. We made brownies, and I think we're dead. Time is going by really, 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 really slow.
Well, instead of being charged, Prilla, sorry. Instead of being charged, the police department let the officer resign. His wife was not charged either. So far, police officials have not commented on the case.
Yet over 400,000 people die from tobacco every year just in the United States. People will say that people would abuse cannabis and that's why it should be made illegal. Have you looked at how people are abusing food, video games, porn, alcohol, prescription drugs, consumerism, and the entire planet? Why don't we just make everything else illegal? Or at least the things that actually kill people? No, people should be able to do whatever they want to do, including cannabis, so long as it doesn't harm anyone else. In fact, the government would have you believe that it's so dangerous that they list cannabis as a Class 1 drug, and is listed more dangerous than cocaine and meth. Have you seen what meth does to people? How is cannabis more dangerous than that? The real reason why cannabis and most other drugs that are in the Class 1 list are considered more dangerous is because they're experiential drugs that open up the consciousness of humanity.
A lot of people have this thought when they take these, does anybody know about this? Because it's really like, it's like a secret. It's like this fundamental thing about the human brain, but no one knows about it and no one talks about it.
I remember walking down this tunnel of light and feeling like Bill and I were walking into a spaceship. Bill was just asking, who are you and why are you here? And just basically being told that the boundaries of space and time are all in our minds, and that we all are one and everything is one. We all are one and everything is one. We all are one and everything is one.
Today, a young man on acid realized that all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration. That we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There's no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we're the imagination of ourselves. Here's Tom with the weather.
Any drug that dulls human senses, from alcohol to the 45 million unfeeling antidepressant zombies, is fine according to the government, so long as you get a permission slip from them. But natural drugs like cannabis, ayahuasca, psychedelic mushrooms, peyote are illegal because they open up the human consciousness beyond the illusion of the control world and reveal that there is a deeper, more powerful existence than what is forced in front of us. As we come to the close of the Age of Oil, and the men that warped our reality with the latest revolution of this debt and death paradigm start to fade away, humanity is going to be faced with a choice to either continue spreading debt and death through collectivism and building unsustainable and dangerous worlds for our children, or are we finally going to become conscious and realize that we are all one and start to build societies that are sustainable and resonate with nature? I believe that silver and cannabis will be the two most important commodities to deal with the collapse of the debt and death empire built on the back of oil. Silver will be used as money to replace the petrodollar and will be a key component into the next generation of industries that will blossom out of the ashes of the current collapse. Cannabis will also have a major role, as millions of people will no longer have access to their antidepressants, gasoline, or cheap clothes from China. Cannabis will fill the natural solution for the problems of humanity. Look for more states to make gold and silver legal tender and legalize cannabis, because those states will be the ones that come out of this collapse the fastest and strongest.
Well, Doug, U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell says he's had long discussions with Senator Rand Paul and Ag Commissioner James Comer on the economic benefits of industrialized hemp, and concluding, you can see here, I'm convinced, McConnell says, that allowing its production will be a positive development for Kentucky's farm families and economy.
Okay, so one of the things we know from research in psychology, as well as just practical matters in the conducting of scientific experiments, is that one of the lowest forms of evidence you could possibly invoke is eyewitness testimony. which is odd because it's one of the highest forms of evidence in the court of law, which disturbs me greatly. So if you come from a lab to a science conference and say, this is true, we say, how do you know this? Because I saw it. Well, that's really the end of your talk. And you just leave. And then we say, come back when you have a chart recorder, or you have, just give me something that does not have to flow through your senses. Because your senses is some of the worst data-taking devices that exist.
You think that if 300 white people were killed in this city every year, they wouldn't send the 82nd Airborne? Negro, please.
Do you believe that this is a full-scale secret operation that includes not only the U.S. but Europe and the rest of the world?
Well, that's apparent because you can see the pictures from all over the world, and I get them constantly. Some areas are worse than others. The excuse for this is, number one, weather modification, number two, to save us from global warming, and number three, to save us from the terrorists. A lot of these programs, of which there are many patterns and which has been designated as wake vortex simulation carried out by NASA Langley Research Center, many of these operations and the patents go on to explain how if there is a biological attack by terrorists at some point, that these exercises and practices will, in a sense, save us with the spider webbery that comes down from the aerosol spraying, potentially gathering the chemical mass spray that could be sprayed on any given population. The problem with that is the terrorists don't have the means to deliver this. They don't have the access to deliver this over the American populace per se. And the only people who have been doing this, that is biological experiments on the American people, is the military themselves, which has been admitted from everything from Operation Shad to the spraying that happened in San Francisco, I believe back in the 60s and the 70s, that literally killed people.
Again, I may not be able to ascribe intent, but what I can say is that it is expected that there will be increased mortality as well as the potential of a huge host of unknown pathogens that we are subject to, and this is not based on speculation. There's a whole arena of biological research that we haven't even begun to touch on.
Could a strange substance found by a Southwest Arkansas man be part of a government found in our sample?
At a community in the San Bernardino Mountains has a real mystery on its hands. The official explanation here is that jet contrails are causing strange lines in the sky.
What effects barium has on the body. Short-term exposure can lead to anything from stomach to chest pains. Long-term exposure causes blood pressure problems. Ryan addressed concerns by chemtrail researchers that barium could be meant to wear down a person's immune system.
You're talking about dominating our air supply without the human consent in a way that is difficult for many of us certainly to conceive, and certainly many of us refuse to accept it even in the light of sufficient and overwhelming evidence.
My job in the U.S. Air Force was working in bioenvironmental engineering. What bioenvironmental engineering is in the Air Force is equivalent to that of the OSHA and the EPA. summarize it, in an attempt to debunk this conspiracy theory as I thought it was, I didn't debunk it. It literally changed my life. Like I said, this is hard for me because it's not easy standing here and telling my story.
Can you go into the details of exactly what you saw?
Yeah, basically to summarize it, part of my job was to know everything that was going on in the military and what type of impact that might have on human health, and then the environmental aspects and impacts. What chemicals are we using? How are we disposing of it? Kind of cradle to grave. So we were the internal compliance people for following OSHA and EPA standards. One part of that process was to approve chemicals, hazardous materials. You know, what are you using? Why do you need it? Where's it being used? And tracking that disposal. After it being brought to my attention about chemtrails or geoengineering, I used to think it was crazy. It actually was disrespectful to my line of work because here we are trying to prevent environmental aspects and impacts and not have anybody get sick from our operations. But in an attempt to debunk, it changed my life. I started noticing things. I started noticing large quantities on the system where I would approve chemicals that did not have a manufacturer name, wasn't tied to a building, and that was normal protocol. When I started asking questions, I slowly became demonized. A couple years passed after that when I asked again and people realized I was kind of being more vocal about it on social media. I was starting to be thrown into a mental institution and have my daughter taken away. That changed my life. I no longer view the military the same way, and I feel like after 9 years of trying to uphold an oath, I'm able to do that now.
Glenn Cannon with Project.Unsearch.com. Got a really cool thing. I've never seen this before. Just saw it this week. And first I want to show you a brief clip from a Disney movie where you're going to see a ground-based cloud seeding operation. And they were talking about this in the 50s, guys. Well, guess what? Looks like we just found the ground-seeded technology that they're using. I don't know if this looks like Army guys, but I'll show you that in just a second. But watch this first.
With the touch of a button, the battle begins. On the ground, chemical cloud seeders begin to work the two storm areas. Robot planes seed the clouds from above. The storm centers over Kansas and over Labrador intensify as seeding continues.
Now changing over to Hurricane Center H8.
Okay, guys, now I'm going to show you two clips. You're going to see a chemtrail producing truck that's just blasting out a massive cloud, just like in that Disney movie. They're making the clouds on the ground now. So now we've got chemtrail trucks cruising around. This one looks like it's, I don't know, it could be Army. I don't know. They're wearing all green. This is crazy stuff, guys. I've never seen this. I want you to get it out everywhere. This is a big, big deal. So check this out. The second clip's going to show you close up on this truck, and it's wild. Get it everywhere. Thanks.
I don't know if you saw the video where I was talking about how in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, I would take walks with my dogs, and I would suddenly hear this noise in the distance. And I was always wondering, what the hell is it? And then suddenly I would see all of these clouds like growing from the ground up. And I said that I felt pretty sure that they had some kind of machine around the farm areas or on farms. So I was just looking at my comments. I got a link from somebody. I don't know where this is, But check it out. Look at that little truck making a cloud. It's making a cloud. And it just grows and grows and grows. Oh, the many ways they can make clouds. And hey, once they get that up in the air, they can seed it to make rain. That's right. It grows and it grows and it grows. Link is below. Yes, it is July 1, 2013. When I was in Great Barrington, Massachusetts, and filming a lot of what was happening in the sky, I noticed these huge, like mountains of clouds kind of growing up from behind they're not really mountains in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, they're more like hills. But they would be literally, it looked like they were just growing from behind the hills, from the ground almost, up. And they would just get these, I mean, they would be massive. But I would also hear some noise. And I saw a video a while back on NASA's cloud making machine, and I thought, all right, I'm sure, because there were a lot of fields, a lot of farming farms around that area, a lot of open space, and I thought they must be making these from some kind of machine. And I think I have posted videos, but I couldn't really capture the noise because it was faint, but I could hear it. And the woman who owns the house where I'm staying now just put up a video, just played a video, and this is it. And this is the noise I believe that I was hearing. Watch this. And tell me if you're not seeing these kinds of clouds in your area. I sure do see clouds like this very often. In fact, I would say, I don't know, 4 or 5 days out of the week now, I'm seeing these enormous artificial clouds. But when I was in Cape Barrington, and suddenly, you know, I would hear this noise go off, and where I was located, it was like it was a fairgrounds that wasn't in use. It was just an open field, and then across the river from where I would take my dogs was all just open area. And suddenly I'd hear this noise, and then suddenly I would see these huge clouds appear in the sky. Now, if anybody knows, I mean, this looks kind of army green, these trucks. But if anybody recognizes the uniforms that these guys are wearing or the trucks, please drop a comment below. So this is just one method of cloud making that they have. They can create clouds with the satellites, with the frequencies, over an area that just has a small pond. They can lift the humidity from the waters and make clouds. This is not my field, and it's, you'd have to go back to my videos and do research on artificial weather modification by artificial satellites, and there's a patent. It's long. It goes into all the details on how they can control the weather with satellites, but also how they can lift the humidity from the water with these frequencies. They can also make clouds with military jets. What I don't understand is that you can even show people videos like this, and they still won't even engage in any conversation about weather modification. You can show people, okay, here's a cloud making machine. Now do you see what's in our sky? It's an artificial cloud. Doesn't it look just like this? And people will just still look at you like you're nuts. I'm telling you, we have something very seriously wrong. It's very serious what's going on in this country. So there we go. How many huge clouds are you seeing in your area?
Man, that's crazy. Yeah. Hey, run up on it. Run up on it. Hell no. Run up on it. What the world? Run up on that joint, Queen? No, I'm not running. You run up on it. It's already fuck with my car, man. That's crazy. You see that? That's crazy. Yes, it is. Go run up on it. That's a lightning class. I should have to get your ass. Oh, man, I ain't never seen. You seen one of those before? For real. Hold on, let me see. That one is yours. That's not no cloud. It is. It just came from out the sky. Yeah, you're simple, ass. Huh? Oh, it is. Oh, girl, he's talking about something that's a lightning cloud. I know.
if we Republicans choose Donald Trump as our nominee, the prospects for a safe and prosperous future are greatly diminished. If Donald Trump's plans were ever implemented, the country would sink into prolonged recession. Isn't he a huge business success? Doesn't he know what he's talking about? No, he isn't. And no, he doesn't. A business genius, he is not. Mr. Trump's bombast is already alarming our allies. Let ISIS take out Assad, he said, and then we can pick up the remnants. This recklessness is recklessness in the extreme. Now, Donald Trump tells us that he is very, very smart. I'm afraid that when it comes to foreign policy, he is very, very not smart. Donald Trump lacks the temperament to be president. After all, this is an individual who mocked a disabled reporter. Donald Trump says he admires Vladimir Putin. At the same time, he's called George W. Bush a liar. That is a twisted example of evil trumping good. There's a dark irony in his boasts of his sexual exploits during the Vietnam War, while at the same time, John McCain, whom he has mocked, was imprisoned and tortured. Dishonesty is Donald Trump's hallmark. His imagination must not be married to real power. Think of Donald Trump's personal qualities: the bullying, the greed, the showing off, the misogyny, the absurd third-grade theatrics. Now, Mr. Trump relishes any poll that reflects what he thinks of himself. But polls are also saying that he will lose to Hillary Clinton. Of course, a Trump nomination enables her victory. There's plenty of evidence that Mr. Trump is a con man, a fake. Mr. Trump has changed his positions not just over the years, but over the course of the campaign, and on the Ku Klux Klan daily for 3 days in a row. I predict that there are more bombshells in his tax returns. I predict that he told the New York Times that his immigration talk is just that, talk. He has too much to hide. Mr. Trump is directing our anger for less than noble purposes. He creates scapegoats of Muslims and Mexican immigrants. This is the very brand of anger that has led other nations into the abyss. Donald Trump is a phony, a fraud. His promises are as worthless as a degree from Trump University. This is a time for choosing. He has neither the temperament nor the judgment to be president. His personal qualities would mean that America would cease to be a shining city on a hill.
I hate to tell you, Puerto Rico, but you've thrown our budget a little out of whack, because we've spent a lot of money on Puerto Rico, and that's fine. We've saved a lot of lives. If you look at the, every death is a horror, but if you look at a real catastrophe like Katrina, and you look at the tremendous hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that died, and you look at what happened here with really a storm that was just totally overpowering. Nobody's ever seen anything like this. Now, what is your death count as of this moment? 17?
16 certified.
16 people certified. 16 people versus in the thousands. You can be very proud of all of your people, all of our people working together. 16 versus literally thousands of people. You can be very proud. Everybody around this table and everybody watching can really be very proud of what's taken place in Puerto Rico.
18 days since Hurricane Maria, and only 11.7% of the island of Puerto Rico has power. Just 29% of cell phone towers are back online. The crisis continues there. But President Trump is patting himself on the back a bit. This week he was interviewed by two of his friends. First, Fox's Geraldo Rivera, then former Governor Mike Huckabee, father of White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. You see this formal sit-down White House setup? Looks really great, right? We're used to seeing these interviews. Every president does them. But Trump hasn't done this with a TV journalist since May. That's when he sat down with Lester Holt of NBC. It's been 5 months, no formal TV news interviews. Now, if Huckabee were a journalist, he would have pushed back on some of Trump's claims in this next clip. Instead, I want you to watch how Huckabee reacts to Trump tossing paper towel rolls into the crowd.
So we did a great job, and we weren't treated fairly by the media because we really did a good job. I mean, one example, they had these beautiful soft towels, very good towels. And I came in, and there was a crowd of a lot of people, and they were screaming, and they were loving everything. And I was having fun. They were having fun. They said, throw them to me, Mr. President. And so I'm doing some of the, so the next day they said, oh, it was so disrespectful to the people. It was just a made up thing. And also when I walked in, the cheering was incredible.
You were a rock star. I saw the video of it.
It was crazy. The cheering was deafening.
Rock star. Let's bring back our panel. April Ryan, Brian Karam, and Joanne Lippman. Brian, your reaction?
Well, when I stop laughing, I'll give it to you. I think who is ever in charge of that visual should be fired. Look, Larry Speakes once said during the Reagan era, don't tell us how to stage the news, we won't tell you how to report the news. The simple fact of the matter is, in this administration, they can't stage the news very well, and they're trying to tell us how to report it. That was a horrible looking moment. It was very demeaning to the people there. Anyone who saw it saw that. I don't know what the deafening cheers were. I didn't hear those. But the simple fact of the matter is this administration does not manage its visuals very well, and they need to get better at it. And this is a very good example of not managing your visuals very well.
Feel